Well, hello, my fellow quilters, and can't believe it is January. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday, and as I said at the first of the year, some friends and I are starting our own Quilt Along Block of the Month. It is from this book, Great American Quilts of 1989, and I have made some changes last year. This book is by Sandra L. O'Brien, and the quilt that we're making is actually the one on the main cover. It's called Billie Sampler. It was made by a lady called Billie Carter. She is from Mansfield, Arkansas, and this sampler is from 1984. It is 24 pieced, various blocks. Some are piece, some are applique. There's a good mix of projects, and as part of the change, I have started a blog, and I'm going to blog my journey in making this quilt and the ways that I choose to make each block. And we're going to do 2 blocks a month, and that is our goal. You're welcome to join along with us. There is no copyright, there's no issues. I'm going to share my patterns. All of the blocks are old blocks, and I think it's going to be fun. I've had a hard time with inspiration. Last year, nothing inspired me in quilting. Every quilt I saw, I just thought, that's nice, but not me. A friend of mine in another quilting group called The Quilter's Way. It is an online quilting guild that we do, that I belong to, that's hosted by Kim Jamerson Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts. And one of the members found this book and really liked this quilt. She shared it. I really liked it. So we decided that the 2 of us were going to do this project this year. We also asked others if they wanted to join. Several other people have decided to join into the process. It is fun to see different people make the same quilt, but it will never be the same because we will use different techniques. And as we go through the blocks, I will share various ways that block could be made, and then tell you why I chose to make it the way that I made it. So this is going to be a fun journey. Also, last year I found that my personal website was down. The company that I had been using for many years had gone out of business. Don't even know how many months my website was down. So I moved my personal website to Google Sites, which is a free, because I was like, I don't want it to go down again. Well, I tried starting quiltingonabudget.com website. I uploaded our monthly quotes with the block patterns, and Google says it violated their community standards and shut the site down. So I went and paid for an online subscription and have spent several months recreating or building quiltingonabudget.com. And Uh, it is up and running now. There's not many entries other than all of the blocks that I have shared on Friday and a few old posts I made years ago. But I'm going to start this journey and discuss about how things work, because one of the issues with older quilt designs is you get this. There are no instructions, you get a grid. So I'm going to explain how to create your own patterns using grids and the whole 9 yards, so that you can be budget minded and use old quilt patterns and not be trapped in paying for something that you don't have to pay for. Because many of the quilts that we pay with our patterns and things are simply people writing out the instruction that you need to cut 5 3-inch squares or whatever. But if you know the grid system, you can cut them yourself and figure it out. The math is simple. The math is not as complicated as everyone wants. But the difference in a grid system opposed to a pattern strip piece is, if you're working on a grid, you make one block at a time. Where chain piecing and pattern, they'll tell you to make 144 half square triangles for the whole quilt. And that gets monotonous. And I personally like making one block at a time, because it looks like you accomplished something. You finished a block. You finished a row. You finished 2 rows. You finished a quarter of the quilt, and so on. So you have progress of completion, where when you're strip piecing or chain piecing, you cut the whole quilt out, you start sewing the blocks, and then weeks or months later, you have a quilt, and you go from beginning to end with no little milestones. It's all or nothing. And I don't like that, because if you quilt block by block, then you have, I'm going to say, a quarter of a quilt finished, and you can stop and go work on something else, then make another few blocks, and so on. So we're going to go through this, and I'm going to make the post, and I also want to make a reference to any of my fellow quilters. If you would like to share your journey, also we can discuss you sharing on our blog. My whole thing about doing this is to share skills and not charge people an arm and a leg. That's quilting on a budget. Quilting on a budget is not buying cheap fabric and cheap thread and cheap sewing machines. You can do that if that's all you can afford. But quilting on a budget is not being taken advantage of. And like I was telling a friend who is not into quilting, is into sewing garments here in Europe, doesn't know much about the quilting world, absolutely was floored when I told them that quilting was an $80 billion a year business. Was shocked. So there we go. But someone is making that 80 billion, and someone is paying that 80 billion. And I started this group with Seth several years ago, And one of the things that pissed me off was I watched a YouTube video. I wasn't even afraid to pay. So I contacted the quilter that showed a quilt block that I just absolutely fell in love with. They were very rude. They were very nasty. Basically told me I had to wait for the new book, which they didn't know when it was going to be published. But everyone in the class in the YouTube video had a copy of the pattern. I went through my historical stuff, found out the block was actually called something else, was a very old block, didn't have to pay for it. So there. But it used grids. And the beauty of grids is you're not stuck with using jelly rolls or 5-inch squares or 10-inch squares or anything. You can choose what size you make. And this quilt is 24 12-inch blocks with 3-inch piece sashing and 10-inch borders on each side. And I think I'm going to do some changes because I think the 10-inch borders are a little much. You can tell this is 1980s colors. I think I'm going to change the colors up. I haven't fully decided. I'm thinking about doing it in red and white, but multiple colors of red. However, I started this program. I've redrafted all 24 blocks, put them in Electric Quilt version 8. I will be sharing the project file from Electric Quilt, so if you are a quilter with Electric Quilt, you'll get the whole quilt in the beginning laid out. It is laid out exactly as it is in this book. So, but you can change it. You can do however you want because, like I said, these blocks have no copyright. They were made years and years ago, and it's going to be a fun challenge. It's going to be a challenge for me because this quilt, Billie Sampler, is not easy piecing challenge. It is difficult. There's lots of hexes, lots of diamonds, lots of applique, lots of Dresden plate styles, just various whole wide, and I really liked it. And the reason I chose to share it is because it has such diverse techniques, and it's going to be interesting because it will allow me to show different ways to do different things, like precision piecing hexes or precision piecing diamonds, which are not fun because all sides are biased. Most people hate that. But I will show tips. It's not going to be cheap, but it will be the old ways of how we do things. And I'll make suggestions of alternatives, and I'll use an example. You use a lot of tearaway stabilizer with a lot of things, but you don't have to use that. Years ago, we used adding machine tape or cash register tape. Now you can use printer paper. There's a lot of choices out there, so you don't have to buy specialty products. You don't need a $22,000 machine. You don't need $300 scissors or anything like that. But I can also explain why some of these tools are better than other tools and why I chose to buy them. If they work for you, then fantastic. Also, you don't have to have Orfill. I tried Orfill. I didn't like it. So I'm one of the few. So I'm just saying that. I don't care what sewing machine you use. It can be 200-year-old hand crank to the latest, fanciest machine. I used Bernina and Pfaff. My sewing techniques are geared to those machines, but I will try to be generic enough that any machine can work, or give you an alternative that you can use on any machine, because there are things my Bernina will do that my Pfaff won't do, and there are things my Pfaff does that my Berninas don't do. And it's the same with every machine. And you can also do every fancy technique with any older machine. You don't need a fancy machine. You just have to know how to do these things the old way. So I'm going to let you go now. This is the first installment of the blog. I will post a link with pictures, and we'll discuss this, and we will get started. So I hope everyone had a wonderful and a safe holiday, and welcome to 2024. Oh my. So, see you later, my quilting fellow quilters. Talk to you later. Bye.